Hello fish fools, Jeff here. So this is my 3.5 gallon Neocaridina shrimp tank. And this is where it all began, where my shrimp populations all began. So I first got Neocaridina shrimp a little over a year and a half ago. And this is the first tank that I had them in. So I started with 8 Neocaridina shrimp. Initially I bought 4 red cherry shrimp, and then shortly after that, I think within a week or so, I got another 4. One was blue, one was black, and 2 were dark red. And from there, they grew this population. So in this tank, there's a bunch, and of course I've since added some. These are Guppy Endler hybrids. I added a male lime green Endler, that's the father right there, and 2 virgin females, and this is that population in here. Very cool looking fish. Gotta look at them. I'm gonna try to angle the light a little bit so you can see some of the fluorescent looking colors on some of them. Pretty awesome. But I'll talk more about these Guppy Endler hybrids another time, but I'm going to focus on the shrimp here. So as I mentioned, I started with 8, and there's so many of them in here. There's a bunch of them on this sponge filter here. Let's see if we can get a better look with the light. To see how many are on that. But yeah, so my plan was initially to try to get a shrimp population going in here, and from there I was going to spread them to my other tanks. There's a good blue one right there. But so the first tank I spread them to was my 30 gallon planted library community tank, and let's go take a look at that. Okay, so it was a year ago when I first added shrimp in here, moved some from the 3.5 gallon tank, and I think it was about 6 to 8 that I first moved in here, and now there's a bunch of them all over the place. So looking on the intake sponge right here, you can see several of them. And there's always some scavenging around the bottom. Always find some up here in the floating plants. Yeah, so when I first put them in here, there was kind of like an experiment. I didn't know if a population would be able to take off in here, because I didn't really know if they would just all get eaten with all the fish in here. And it was after releasing them, when it was probably 3 weeks had gone by until I even saw any. So they were hidden for a while, but then more and more kept seeing more and more as days and weeks went by. And then eventually the population just grew. And it was in this tank that I first noticed some of these that have like skunk stripes. I guess that must be like wild type traits, but I think they're really cool looking. And just from reds that I started with and one blue and one black, they all just ended up, just creating a bunch of different colors mixing together. And I like it that way. It's similar to how I like guppies and platies. I don't really like just pure strains that just breed true and they all look the same. I like the variety. Of course, some of them are more clear looking. Oh, there's a good look at one of the striped looking ones. They have like a stripe on their back. I think they're cool. Alright, so this was the first tank I moved shrimp to. After this, the next tank I moved them to was my 5.5 gallon, so I'll show you that next. Alright, so here's my 5.5 gallon tank. It has guppies, white clouds, platies, and now Neocaridina cherry shrimp. So it was about 6 months ago when I first added some shrimp in here. And if I remember, I think it was just 5 that I added. And from there, I mean, they're all, what's different about what's happened in this tank, these are all red. So somehow, just whatever were brought over didn't have any of the, I guess, the mixed shrimp creating other colors. But so here's some saddled, so that's how I know they're female. I mean, I really don't even know how to sex them, tell them apart from male and female, other than when they are saddled or buried. So saddled has, you can see that on the back, and then when they're buried, you can just see in their belly they have eggs buried in their belly. If I notice any that are buried, I'll point them out. But yeah, so started with adding 5 in here, and now there's got to be 50. It's just taking off like crazy in here. All right, and then the next tank I moved them to was my 10-gallon mutt guppy tank. So let's check that out. All right, so here it was, I think, almost 3 months ago when I first added shrimp in here. And if I remember, I'm gonna take a stab at 7 were the amount that I moved in here. But I don't remember, and I didn't, when I have moved shrimp, I didn't select any in particular or any particular amount. I just attempted to grab some, and whatever happened to come along, that's what we were going to start with. Like, I did that thinking I would try a first that first little group and see what happens from there. If I wasn't able to get a population growing from there, I would have brought more, but it just was never necessary. So from there, there's a bunch of shrimp in here now. So let's come and get a closer look. So you can see all the red in here. There's one of the, it's kind of like wild looking with the stripe on the back. There's a nice dark red female, looks like it's saddled. A wild looking one there. And there's a Siamese algae eater. I moved that in here to eat up some blackbeard algae, and now I'm about to move him to another tank to do the same thing. But yeah, for shortly after I added them in here, I would rarely see them. I saw a few here and there, and then eventually just more and more started popping up. So I don't see them when they're tiny baby shrimplets. Like, they just hide. When I first had my 3.5 gallon shrimp tank, when I first started with shrimp, when they had shrimplets, I would see them like really tiny little specks. But that was before having lots of other fish in there. So these other tanks where I started them, added them to tanks that already had established with fish. They don't come out until they're grown. So when they're babies, they're well hidden, so you don't even know that they've had babies, and then you don't see them until they're bigger. And here's a red wag platyfry. That's the mother right there. I moved that platy in here the same time I moved the shrimp, so that platy was born in here. Yeah, pretty psyched. This is my latest tank that I've got the population going in, but I have also one other tank that I've added them to. So let's take a look at that. We might not be able to see any shrimp in there, but we'll see. Alright, so here is my 29 gallon sailfin molly and swordtail community tank. And I added some Neocaridina shrimp in here almost 2 months ago. So this has yet to have the population take off, and I don't see shrimp yet very often. There's a catopole here, and I know there's some grazing behind it, and that's kind of where they hang out and hide, but I don't see them out in the open. I used to see one hanging out in the hole of that mopane wood right there. Occasionally I'd see some on the sponge filters. That one or that one, none seem to be out and about there. And I might see one up here in the water sprite. Don't see any right now. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if how it's gonna go in this tank, getting a population going. After the population took off in my 30 gallon, I was confident and had pretty much no doubt that I was gonna get them going in the 5.5 gallon and the 10 gallon muck guppy tank. What the difference with those have lots of Java moss, lots of hiding places, and those are more established tanks. This one is my most recent tank, so by comparison, like I said, those have Java moss, those have rock piles. The 30 gallon and the 10 gallon muck guppy tank have rock piles, and the 5.5 gallon has cholla wood that has lots of holes in it that fish can't get into, but shrimp can hang out inside. So that, and those tanks being more established, they have mulm and algae and just whatever microorganisms that they can graze on that this tank might not have established yet. So one thing I'm going to do differently in here is